It is cool, and we appreciate it too. And I'm realizing that you've throughout the course of the conversation, parts one and now that we're, I
Part
don't know,
two.
20 minutes into part two, you've alluded to Exsilio and the curiosity of the people there, and we haven't gotten to how Exsilio came together. So I want to hear the origin story.
So it started with a really smart investor within OrbiMed, Roy Amarillo, who's a principal in our office, and he thought that he was trained as a geneticist, and he realized that there was an opportunity here to kind of pull these two strands together. And the strand that says I can do something with mRNA lipid nanoparticle, and I can insert a whole gene doing gene therapy based on these primordial elements if I can engineer them better. And so he went and talked to some academics who were working in the space, and he managed to get a few to kind of talk to him and start to kick the idea back and forth. And then they hired a few people. OrbiMed is a venture firm backed him and this idea and gave them some initial seed funding to go hire some folks. And, we initially hired somebody who does this bioinformatics thing where they go and look at genomes of various species. The interesting thing about these elements is that they evolve in different species, but because they're limited to a species and they don't jump between species, then they will look very different if they're in a fish or in a bird or in a mammal or in a human being. But if they exist in areas that are conserved in our genome, then you can actually take an element from a butterfly or from a fish, and you can actually put them in our genome, and it's going to work because the landing pad of the sequences are actually the same. And so he started to put these folks together, hired some very creative and talented team, started up a lab, and started to explore, can I find these sequences? Can I improve upon them? And I was about 18 months about 18 months after the company was formed. I was visiting the area, and they said, you're a partner. Why don't you come and hear the pitch? And I'm thinking to myself, well, this is great, right? I can just go around. Why don't I hear the pitch? And then we'll go out for lunch. I'll make some new friends. I'll sate my curiosity, and that'd be the end of it. Because 99% of the pitches I hear, most of the time I don't even get lunch, but at least I get my curiosity.
It's always the food that brings someone to the table.
Right. And so we sit down and they start to tell me about this story. And I'm like, this evolution angle really spoke to me. And I'll tell you why in a minute. And it goes back again to Moderna. But I'm thinking to myself, this is really a neat idea, because you're taking something that you find in evolution, you figure out what is it that you can tweak about it to actually make it better and get it to a level of potency that you can now use it as a therapeutic. Okay, tell me more. And then they keep going, and an hour turns into two. At a certain part, I said, forget lunch. We're not going to get to the restaurant. Let's just keep talking. They get the scientific founder on the phone. And by hour three, I was hooked, because I realized they'd actually reduced it to practice. They had some initial data to show that they can indeed do this. They can find such an element. They can improve it to the point that I could see a path to a medicine. Mm-hmm. And they tell me, don't worry, just give me funding for another year and I'll keep improving it. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you can go keep improving it, but can we please make a medicine out of this? This is good enough. Let's get started down the road of making medicines. And so they all looked at me and said, yeah, okay, what do we do? These are, a bunch of early research guys. And so I basically joined and took it upon myself to raise more money and start to build what we call development, so to take the research and translate it into what could be development candidates, so that we can see a path to making medicines. And we're now well into that journey. We still need to hire, still need to build a team, still need to find a CEO that's better than me. We'll get there. But in the meantime, the companies continue to make progress. Like they said when I joined them, they indeed have continued to improve on that potency. While in the meantime, we've hired a couple of people who can start to do the experiments in animals to start to show what this thing can actually look like.
Yeah. Take me through the thought process at that point. Like you've come off an incredible experience at Moderna. You're doing, you have this really unique perch at OrbiMed where you've got the lay of the land and access to all sorts of companies, mRNA and otherwise, right? You would more than likely be anointed the leader of any mRNA company that chose to have you, given your experience. and yet you choose. Maybe you answer the question in sort of your, your description of how things came together, and you're intrigued by the curiosity. But why? Like, take me through the thought process. Like, why join this company and choose to lead it that is starting so early stage? So when you could probably step into a super cushy position with a company that's far closer to commercial viability and perhaps putting a product on the market. Just take me. I'm just curious to get inside your brain, like when you're making this decision.
Yeah.
The face you just made was amazing.
I'm trying to think. Look, I have an answer to that, but whatever that answer is, I can tell you, my wife was not convinced. So I'll give it another shot. I'm super proud and feel fortunate to have joined OrbiMed and that they accepted me as an investing partner. For me, at this stage in life, to kind of learn by doing, with full immersion in a place and a team that has this phenomenal track record of successive successful investment in life sciences companies, I take it as a privilege. And I'm not that long into the tenure here. And I don't know, I don't think any leadership of any company is a cushy position, no matter what stage the company. I think being an operator is always challenging, and especially being a CEO. This wasn't, if you will, a choice that I did because I thought, the next thing in my career, I need to go tick that box. As I alluded to in our previous conversation, I'm sort of done with the box ticking part of my life. And now it's about, okay, where can I add value by virtue of what I know? I think what happened, honestly, is that I just saw an opportunity to translate what I thought was a fascinating bit in science and to push it along outside of the research/curiosity domain into the, let's put it on a path to making medicines domain. The path that is fundable, the path that should align with a return on investment. And I felt that I was sort of uniquely qualified, given my experiences, to go help this company in that next leg of its journey. And, with that experience and the privilege of having done what I've done and the luck to have been able to do what I've done, I feel comes a certain responsibility to actually make good on that. So if you see something like this and you think, okay, you believe you've got some experiences that are relevant, uniquely relevant here, and you can help this group of folks and this bit of science to go on the next leg of journey towards making medicine, well, that also carries an obligation to do that. And I sort of felt compelled. Again, my goal, neither for the short run nor the long run, frankly, is necessarily to be the CEO of this company. But this company right now and this bit of science has the potential to translate into medicine. And, I'm in a position, I think, to contribute to support doing that. So I'm obligated.
Yeah. Speaking of your contributions to that, and you told us a story on part 1 of Storytime with Tal about, you told us a story.
Tal's Tall Tales.
Yeah, that was it. That was the one. You told us a story about the balance between IP protection and getting published to attract capital. And the story was the one where you told us about the journal Nature review juxtaposing Moderna at the time with Theranos, using the two in the same sentence. And so that story being on the record, I want to push you a little bit more on that story and maybe extract what that experience, because here Exsilio is in a position where there is no, stated pipeline, but there is IP. So coming off of that experience, and I'm sure other experiences like it, how is it informing what you're doing now in terms of your management of an early stage company that has IP but doesn't have a, quote unquote, publishable pipeline?
Well, I think that, to go back to, if you will, that story, and I don't know if we shared it with the public, but it goes back to the importance of aligning, doing good in the world, being ethical, and getting a return on investment. And so for me, where thou must publish is when you're in clinical trials. And even though technically in phase 1 in healthy volunteers, you don't need to, my personal philosophy is you have to publish everything you do in mankind, full stop. You have to publish it in peer review journals. And if you agree with that logic, then actually it also means you have to publish the preclinical basis for any clinical experiment. So if I want to treat another human being with a medicine, then the science behind that, why that is credible, needs to be published in a peer-reviewed journal. That's my personal belief. It's not written, I don't think, in any regulation. And you can get regulatory approval without publishing your papers, but I think it's incumbent upon you to have that sort of public scrutiny on what it is you're doing. Earlier than that, though, you have to contend with the competitive nature of our business and wanting to actually give your investors a return on their investment, which means if you're ahead of the competition, then you can't enable them. And so you publish really when you need to be credible. And the question is, well, okay, why do you need to be credible? And you need to be credible because you want to attract talent, you want to attract capital. Well, if you can do that in a confidential manner, which as a private company you can attract capital as a private company, then you don't necessarily need to publish. And you can hire people if you have them sign CDAs and you show them data in confidence. That's common. And so you don't actually need that public sort of imprint that what you do is actually holds up. Now, that being said, it does mean that investors and potential employees who need to join you need to do their due diligence. They can't rely on proxies in the public domain to say, yeah, some 2 peers who shall remain anonymous have vetted this, even though we know often that doesn't necessarily replicate. But I think this ecosystem is stringent enough, and the good venture capital firms, the ones that are known, have a reputation, and they're also careful to vet their investments and not put their money behind things that are nonsense. And so I think where Exsilio is today, there is no immediate need to publish, and probably a hindrance to publish. Where Exsilio will be, hopefully tomorrow, we will start to have a need to publish to justify the clinical experiment that we're about to undertake, and at that point, we absolutely will.
Yeah, tomorrow we're going to take that literally, right? Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, they're poised, guys. This is getting serious. That actually ties really beautifully into my question. So you had mentioned that from a career trajectory standpoint, at some point you hope that there will be someone else to sort of take over, right, the leadership of Exsilio. But in the meantime, as you are about to embark into the clinic tomorrow, there's a lot of challenges, I'm sure, ahead of you. Where are you looking that you think you're going to be spending most of your time in the next year, right? In terms of leading this company, what are you expecting to be challenged by the most? And, keeping in mind too, that this is a nascent scientific space as we're moving mRNA into the therapeutic world.
Well, first of all, let me correct 2 assumptions just for clarity, since we're on the record here. It's not going to be tomorrow that we're in the clinic. and I have, while I hope to find somebody better than me as a CEO, this is an open-ended commitment on my side. I'll be here as long as it takes to get the best out of this platform. The challenges, I think they're sort of in 3 buckets. The first is, as any young company, our science is nascent, and we need to continue the balance between exploring our curiosity and doing the stuff that will get us the actual products, if you will. Because anytime you hit sort of a roadblock when something doesn't work as expected, and every young company has those, then it takes a bunch of curious, smart people to start to poke around the edges and figure out, well, how do we get around this, right? And so there's always that balance, and getting that balance right is always challenging. If this were to follow a logical step of progression, to solve that, you do this, it wouldn't be what it is. it actually, it takes me back. My late father was a mathematician, and I never fully understood everything he did, but I understood enough to know that for every, the greatest mathematicians are known not necessarily by the answers they gave, but by the questions they posed.
Hmm.
And so they were able to pose a question: how do you prove this? I think this is right. Can anybody prove it? And, the better the mathematician, the longer it took for somebody to actually answer that question. And if you think about it, even in mathematics, which is the epitome of logical thinking, proving something new, writing a new paper, actually takes some sort of associative thinking that comes out of left field, because if it were just a logical progression, it wouldn't be tough to do. I think the corollary in our space, and I'm taking you back to the challenges that we face, it is making sure that we get the balance right within the company as we navigate our way forward from this nascent science and technology into actual products that we think can work for people. There's a lot of work for us ahead on that. The second challenge is finding the right people. This is a team sport, and every time I'm in a meeting, if I'm the one giving the answer to the question, I know that I've got a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not in a good place if I'm the one giving the questions. Not giving the answers. My answers may be okay. Most of the time, they won't be. The problem is I won't know if they are or not, right? So building up the team with the right level of experience and the right competencies to take this company forward is absolutely my number one challenge these days, as we continue to grow the team and make progress. And the final one, which kind of goes back to the investment thesis, balancing the books in the sense that balancing the spend on a monthly basis versus what you have in the bank versus what is actually creating value that you can show investors you're one step further down the path. No, I'm still not in that clinical experiment that I promised Anna Rose I'll be tomorrow, but I'm one step closer to it. Therefore, the value is increased. Therefore, it's time for another funding round. How do you manage that with the actual burn, if you will? Your financing strategy is absolutely critical for success, and that's part of the equation here.
Yeah, well, to the extent that you can, I hate saying unpack. Let's unpack
It's
that.
a common word.
Yeah, that's
we use it a lot.
cliche.
I find myself using it all the time.
But I'm going to say it. Let's unpack that a little bit. How do you think about return on investment, and how, like, it's an interesting perspective that you have, because as an investor, in your role at OrbiMed, you're the man, holding expectations. And as the CEO at Exsilio, you're the man managing expectations. So walk us, take us down that tightrope.
Do you get into fights with yourself?
Well, the biggest arguments are always between the right side and the brain and the left side and the brain. If only they would talk to each other more, they'd figure it all out, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I think that to answer it seriously, the world of biotech investing has changed in the last few years with the macroeconomic changes that we face. You realize that people who invest in us can invest anywhere. They don't need to invest with us. So we're competing for those investment dollars with tech, with biotech, with other investment opportunities at some level with treasuries. When interest rates go up, then a long-term investment suddenly becomes less palatable. When you live in a zero interest rate world, then somebody's got $100 and they need to figure out what to do with it. Well, if nobody gives them any interest on it, then they can sit on $100, and in 10 years, that $100 will be $100. And if they come to me and I say, look, I'm gonna make you 3 times that money, but it's gonna take me 10 years, then they say, great, because now I can make 100 into 300, and it's okay because time doesn't cost me. But if we're in a world of 5% interest rates, then in 10 years, that $100 is already 200 if I do nothing else with it but buy treasuries. So our hurdle rate, what we call the level that we need to justify as a return on the investment, has suddenly become challenging. And that's had an effect on a lot of very early stage kind of platform biotechs. And so managing the time to value creation is critical, while managing how much investment you absolutely need, and don't get more money than you absolutely need to get to the next step. And that's a little bit different than what it used to be. It used to be that, well, as soon as you can get money, go get money, right? Now you're going to have to justify a higher valuation for getting more money, and that's becoming more and more challenging. And so you've seen the effects kind of in the ecosystem, and I think one of the jobs I have is to thread that needle, is to make sure that the capital that the investors have given me is deployed wisely, deployed efficiently, and meeting the milestones required to demonstrate progress on that path to making the medicine.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you can impact it more, except to say that you kind of you watch very carefully what it is you're spending money on. You try to give people some freedom, but I'll give you a concrete example. At Exsilio, we've made the decision to outsource the messenger RNA and lipid nanoparticle for the animal work that we need, because we thought it would be more capital efficient. I've very much constrained the size of the team because, as we move things further along, the guys who are doing the early discovery, well, guess what? They want to keep doing early discovery. And at a certain point, I have to say, yeah, no, if you keep doing what you were doing yesterday and I need to do new stuff, that means I need to go hire more people. Well, we're actually going to constrain the size of the organization until we get to sort of our next milestone. So I need you to do less of that and go over here and help your buddies who are kind of trying to move the ball down the field.
Yeah. Does Exsilio have a CFO yet?
We have a CFO who's actually a venture partner with OrbiMed still and is a consultant to us as a company. So I think our entire C-suite is pretty much consultants at this point, which again allows me to keep the cash burn lower.
Yeah, yeah, fractional leadership approach, so to speak, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if 80% is of my time is fractional, then yes, you nailed it.
It's an obtuse fraction.
Well, this might seem a little bit like a non sequitur of a question to ask, but I actually think it's really essential, because I think earlier on you were saying that without greater understanding of mRNA medicines, of any medicine in general, right, and being able to speak that same language that your patients need to understand, that physicians need to understand, all of the work that you're doing at Exsilio and that the entire industry is doing today to bring mRNA therapeutics to market is going to be for naught, right, if people don't understand what they're doing. So, kind of leaping from that commercial return of investment concept into the world of commercializing an mRNA therapeutic, right? You've emphasized the importance of that education, and publications are one way to do that. But we've also seen a couple of things happen in the past couple of weeks. We saw Moderna just released, I think, kind of the first of its kind, right? A free course on mRNA medicines to start educating the public about what these products are and what mRNA can do.
Maybe should have done that 3 years ago. Just one idea.
Might have been a little good, better around the time of the vaccine, but here we are, right? And we are still working ahead with that. But, as someone that's now heading up a company in the mRNA therapeutic space, how do you think we should, as an industry and individual companies, company leaders, be educating the public, right, today about what these medicines are, and even more importantly, what they are not, what they do versus what they do not do?
Yeah, I honestly wish I had a good answer. So I thought the answer was me talking to you guys. You're telling me it's not?
Well, it's part of the answer for sure. I mean, part of the answer for sure. My mom, let's put it this way. My mom doesn't listen to this podcast. So,
well,
and she's one of the ones who needs some education.
That's true.
So I'll raise you one. My mom does listen to this podcast and listens to everyone I do. So
she's going to be so proud when she hears you made 2 parts of the business of biotech, back-to-back episodes.
But I look, I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to use whatever venue and resource we have in order to do that. I give Stefan Moderna a lot of credit for what they've done. I think Stefan's been a visionary from the get-go in educating the public and speaking about it in terms that are easy to understand, in making sure that Moderna invested in those resources. And frankly, if you look at the history of Moderna, starting with educating the Moderna workforce about everything that they're doing. And I have a lot of admiration for his leadership in those regards. I think that there's not a one-size-fits-all here. You know, I've tried to do it in whatever academic opportunities I've had. When I think one of the things that scare people when it comes to nucleic acid technology, mRNA, DNA, gene therapy is, you know, are we messing with creation? And that's sort of a slippery slope because, you know, everything you do around us is not as found by nature. And I think what's important to explain to people is why we believe what we're doing is safe and why do we think it's got a benefit to people. And that's why we who are at the forefront of developing novel medicines feel we have a moral imperative to develop novel treatments that are safe and effective. This is probably particularly relevant for gene therapy. And I can tell you for many years when I was at Moderna, you know, I looked at a lot of the approaches, and I was on record as saying, you know, as a medical oncologist, some of those things scare me. And mRNA, the beauty of mRNA as opposed to gene therapy is that mRNA is very transient, does not integrate with the genome. You know, the effects are gone in a day or two, at least as far as protein production. And there's no long-standing effect. And I have to tell you, Exsilio is the first company that I'm sort of personally investing both time and capital. And the primary reason for me to get involved here personally, beyond the curiosity and the path to medicine, is the sense that there's a potential for differentiating safety. The specific elements that the folks described and discovered and are engineering are elements that live within our genome in places that are very safe. We have hundreds of repeat elements, and they're nowhere near any cancer-causing gene. And so if our elements can really live specifically only in those places, then I'm much more comfortable as a medical oncologist that I can go and put a new gene in one of those places and it'll be fine. And so far, the specificity, that exquisite ability to only be there is maintained. And what got me confident is not sort of because we engineered it to be that way, but because when the team started looking at these elements, they looked to nature across the tree of life, and they could only find them in that very specific area that's not close to any cancer-causing gene. And that gave me the confidence that these elements are indeed within a safe harbor location. And therefore, if we go make a gene medicine based on this, it should indeed be safe. Now, you know, we have to prove that, and we're developing the tools to prove it. And the onus of proof is, of course, on us. But if that holds true, then I feel very comfortable as a medical oncologist to say that I believe this should be both efficacious and safe to develop for patients. It's the same framework that the FDA uses. It has to do with safety and efficacy, right? And the bar is probably different if you're, well, for sure it's different if you're talking about a cancer patient or you're talking about a healthy person trying to get vaccinated against an infectious disease that they might not even get. And I think one of the things I've enjoyed most and learned most was the stark difference between the two and how it makes you think about medicine as a whole. You know, it's interesting, and people much smarter than me have spoken about this. The medicine as I as I practiced it, as I learned it, is treatment of sick people. And few people are as sick as cancer patients with late stage disease. And so my goal is to take a person who's sick and cure them, right? Make them better.
Mhm.
Okay. My vision for that patient is actually their past. The best I can hope for them is that they will be a few days before when they didn't have cancer.
Yeah.
We as physicians don't try to take healthy people or people who are clinically well and think about how do we make them healthier? How do we make them better? That is something that we leave for, that's an engineering mindset of continuous improvement. Physicians, we don't think about, I'm a medical oncologist. I'm a serious physician. I treat with, serious illness. I don't make healthy people healthier. I mean, if you come to my office and you're healthy, well, get out of my office. What am I going to do for you, right?
Yeah.
The people who make healthy people healthier, oh, we leave that to the yoga instructionist and the nutritionist and well, really?
Yeah.
I mean, what did I do? I developed a vaccine that took healthy people and made them healthier.
Yeah.
When you think about it, right? And so it kind of made me step back and think about what is it that we're trying to do as physicians. And I think that concept of benefit risk has to be put in the context of your health and what the benefit is that you anticipate getting.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
That's it. I know.
You just opened up.
My mind is.
I see story time with Tal Part 3 coming.
There are like fireworks going off in my brain right now. I have no words.
I'm going to, we'll do that. We'll do down the road. We'll do that. But I'm going to let you off the hook, Dr. Zaks, because you've given us so much of your time already, but I don't want to let you off the hook without giving you an opportunity to share with us a little bit about what is next on the immediate horizon, besides finding a new CEO to replace you when you're ready, when you're ready, when your contributions are
into the future,
when your contributions are waning. No, but seriously, what are sort of the next, I guess, inflection points for Exsilio?
I think for Exsilio, it's to develop the technology to the point where we can start to show the utility in preclinical models of disease. That's sort of the next immediate milestone for us. For me, it's to build a company and to continue my journey at Orbimed. I think as a field, and we didn't touch on this, watching new technologies start to abut and make inroads into our industry. AI is the buzzword that everybody's using, and there's several stories I can share on where that stands today. That's been a fascinating thing for me to watch and learn and start to be part of. And as I said, we're using some of those tools already at Exsilio, but we're just in a very fortunate moment of time from a translating science into medicine perspective, given all the progress that's happening and accelerating in the world of science. And I'm just super jazzed to be able to be part of translating all that into actually people feeling better and living longer.
Yeah. Yeah. The AI angle is one, I think fodder for another day. It is fascinating to me, and I'm super interested in your perspective on that, given your perspective, right? You're a physician, you're a scientist. A lot of folks in your community are skeptical. I think the most in-depth and convincing conversations I've had with companies that are playing with AI have come from AI companies who just happen to be working in our industry or perhaps developing a demonstrable pipeline based on that technology. But when I talk to the hardcore folks, it's like there's all sorts of skepticism. So I would like to open up that conversation with you sometime. But again, we need to wrap things up here today. So
you know where to find me, Matt.
I know where to find you. We've found you a few times already.
Ominous.
Yeah,
it's so ominous.
Super thankful that you've given us the time, though. Thank you, and I want to thank your mom too. She did a bang up job. I know she's listening.
Yes, thank you.
I know she's listening. So, Mrs. Zaks, you did a fantastic job. Wonderful young man.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening.
So that's Exsilio Therapeutics CEO and chair of the board of directors, Dr. Tal Zaks.